So, Twitter and the Democrats are having a coordinated assault on Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're trying to undermine the democratic process and expel a sitting member from Congress. But before we get started, how about you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please leave a comment down below. Constructive feedback helps, or conversations are always good. It helps with the algorithm. So let's get started. From Raheem Kassam. Twitter has restricted Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene's access to her account on the same day Democrats are attempting to expel her from Congress. In a wildly authoritarian move, Dems will try to remove a democratically elected member, and big tech is abetting the process. I don't think they're abetting the process. I don't think they're helping. I think it's a coordinated assault. The representative who put forth the resolution to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene is from California. This is a coordinated attack. There's too many coincidences for this to be just a coincidence. So I understand correlation is not causation, but when there are when so many things are coincidences, you have to look and see if there is a causal link between the two, because it appears to be. Marjorie Taylor Greene's suspension came in overnight for repeated violations, quote unquote. The National Pulse understands no more specifics were given. She is due to gain access back in 12 hours. So they're attacking her because they don't like what she has to say. They're attacking her because, like it or not, she is a very loud, very populist conservative. What she says is not necessarily right or correct. She's not the most well-educated individual. That's why she basically was spreading out conspiracy theories. But she does have a lot of heart, and sometimes she does say the right thing. Not as in the right thing to get in trouble, but I mean the right thing to ruffle the feathers of Democrats. The right thing as in basically exposing the Democrats for who they are. Because when Nancy Pelosi smacks her down to the ground, what does she do? What does she do? Does she crawl back to her office and disappear for a couple months? No. She gets up, she brushes herself off, and she spits in Nancy Pelosi's face. So what did she do? This is what she did on Instagram. She put up a sign in front of the fence around the Capitol building that says, "Welcome to Fort Pelosi. It's time for this wall around the Capitol to come down." So when the Democrats are trying to smack her down, when they're trying to remove her from office, is she trying to hide? Is she trying to play damage control? Is she begging to stay in office? No, she's calling the Democrats out for being totalitarian fascists, for being authoritarian, for trying to destroy their political opposition. They are not acting like democratically elected representatives. They are acting like autocrats. They're acting like authoritarians, because that's what they are. They don't believe in democracy. That's why they are trying to steal Mariam Miller Meeks' seat from Iowa. That's why you had Representative Brindisi sounding like Donald Trump, claiming that there are so many election issues, so many election irregularities in New York District 22. And now you have Democrats attacking everybody they don't feel safe around. You know, people don't feel safe around those who are bigger than them. So eventually, you're going to have some resolution that says for every person in Congress with a testosterone level above a certain amount, for every alpha male in Congress, we're going to have to expel them because they could be seen as a threat. They could get angry and flip a table. It's going to come to that eventually. They're going to widen that bubble of what they see as a threat because they're so insecure with themselves and they are so weak that they can't handle a little opposition because they know their platform is weak. Imagine having such a weak platform that you cannot allow your opposition to speak, because if they speak, people will know you're full of shit. Because that's exactly what they are. They're just full of it. So they have to, suspend the Twitter account of Marjorie Taylor Greene so she cannot defend herself as they attack her seat, as they undermine the democratic process. Now imagine if she was allowed to speak and she was basically saying the same thing. She would say the Democrats are so insecure with their razor thin margin in the House of Representatives. Now they have to attack individual members that they see is in a politically weak stance that they can expel so they can increase their margin, so they can increase their majority. That's how desperate the Democrats are. And they're afraid that Republicans will have a voice, that people will hear what the Republicans have to say and go, well, that actually makes a lot of sense. Why are you undermining the democratic process? Because she's not really saying anything controversial for the past couple months. So what's the issue now? Why didn't you try to expel her a couple weeks ago? But she's, if anything, when the Guam National Guard basically had that low key, subtle, fascistic flex when 30 of them came to her office, she was like, this is extremely inappropriate, but she didn't attack them like the Democrats had been attacking her. She handled it well. She said, this is extremely inappropriate because it was. The military is supposed to be apolitical. Yet the Democrats have weaponized the military. They have weaponized big tech. They have weaponized the institutions. And now they're going after those with actually good ideas. So Marjorie Taylor Greene may not have good ideas, but she has heart. She has boulders between her legs. She will spit in Nancy Pelosi's face. Instead of, like I said, instead of just crawling and hiding and balling up in a corner, she will just get up and spit in your face and just give you the finger and walk away, and then do this little stunt where it says welcome to Fort Pelosi, because that's essentially what it is. Where Nancy Pelosi wanted to have machine guns. She wanted to have vehicle-mounted machine guns so she can shoot protesters. That's Nancy Pelosi. That's the Democrats' mindset. And you're telling me they're pro-democracy? No, they're pro-Democrat. They're anti-democracy, though. They're pro-one-party rule. They're pro-authoritarian. It's just BS on so many levels. So from Rep. Jimmy Gomez, I believe some of my House GOP colleagues, and one in particular, wish harm upon this legislative body. So that's what I said. It's not going to stop at Marjorie Taylor Greene. I believe some of my colleagues, more than one. So once they get rid of her, they're just dipping their toe in the water. Because imagine if they said, we're trying to expel 20. Well, that would never happen. People would lose their mind. But it's just one person. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene. And then they're going to find the next one. So possibly Lauren Boebert, because she's on there on the fringe end of the GOP, if you would. And so so they'll go Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and then they'll find some other loud, and then probably Anderson Cawthorn, or however you say his, Madison Hawthorne. They would probably go after Madison Hawthorne after that. So these young, loud Republican voices, they're just going to go each one and basically dial back on the crazy. So eventually you're going to get to the point where they're now expelling mainstream GOP voices as a quote unquote threat. Because they're insecure, because they're weak, both physically and mentally. I won't watch Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene threaten our democracy and do nothing. Today, I formally introduced a resolution to expel Greene. So how does she threaten the democracy? He has no proof. But let's watch his presentation, shall we?
Mr. Speaker, I believe some of my Republican colleagues, and one in particular, wish harm upon this legislative body. And I'm not saying this for shock value. It's the conclusion I drew after a member of Congress advocated violence against our peers, the Speaker, and our government. It is what I believed after this chamber was turned into a crime scene just 10 weeks ago. It's how many of us felt sheltering in this room as the Capitol was breached. Some members called their loved ones to say goodbye, others prayed to their God. And I asked myself if this would be the day our democracy died. I take no joy in introducing this resolution, but any member who incites political violence.
There you go. That line right there is going to be used to essentially, because they wanted to kick. You have progressive Democrats saying we need to expel all 100 and something GOP representatives who, quote unquote, incited the Capitol riot, who wanted to undermine democracy. That line right there, if they expel Marjorie Taylor Greene, they're going to expel all the representatives, all the Republican representatives from the House of Representatives.
And threatens our lives must be expelled. And I'll do everything I can in my power to protect our democracy and keep all my colleagues safe.
You're not protecting democracy. You are being a walk. I'm going to get in trouble if I say that. You are weak. If you're afraid of a tiny woman, you are weak. You are afraid of ideas, and that is pathetic. Grow a pair, dude. You need to grow a pair because there's been zero threat to the Capitol since that day. The Capitol Police won't even release their intelligence from before the Capitol riot. I wonder what they're trying to hide, because that's very important. If you're not releasing your intel that you had, you're not releasing the communications between the Capitol Police, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate Majority Leader. Well, what did they know? When did they know it? Who denied what? Because there's arguments that, or actually Donald Trump said he requested 10,000 National Guard troops before that event, and that was denied. So it's really hard to say that it was Republicans' fault. You already have evidence that CNN directly funded domestic terrorists, and NBC and various other outlets, and they all lean to the left. Too many coincidences for it to be just a coincidence. We need to look into it, but the Capitol Police Department is shielded from FOIA requests, and we need to change that because they're hiding something. And it's not a conspiracy theory because, well, there's proof that they're hiding something. They're not even releasing the cause of death of Officer Sicknick. They claimed that he was killed during the Capitol riot. They used that during Trump's impeachment. They claimed that Sicknick was beaten to death by a fire extinguisher. Only until after the impeachment, the Capitol Police said, well, actually, he didn't die from a fire extinguisher. He died from a stroke the next day. Well, you would think that's something the Capitol Police would have known. Like, I don't know, probably when he died from a stroke the next day and was never beaten with a fire extinguisher. But they allowed that narrative to go on. There's something going on. And we need to find out what it is. Why are the Democrats trying to undermine hundreds of thousands of Georgian voters right now? Why are they trying to undermine hundreds of thousands of Iowan voters right now? Why are they trying to undermine hundreds of thousands of New York voters? This is getting out of hand. And it's not a slippery slope fallacy because they're playing their hand. He said it himself. He feels endangered by other members of the GOP. He's testing the waters. If they can expel MTG, they can expel them all because they're dangerous, because ideas are dangerous. Let's check out Newsweek. In this release, he said, her very presence in office represents a direct threat against the elected officials and staff who serve our government. It is with their safety in mind, as well as the security of institutions and public servants across the country, that I call on my House colleagues to support my resolution to immediately remove Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from this legislative body. Greene was removed from her committee positions in February after a House vote. This came following controversy over social media actions prior to her time in Congress. So, like I said, she shouldn't have been kicked from those committees because her constituents voted her into office. They knew she was probably cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So who is Congress to say who can and cannot serve in the House of Representatives? Because it's not their decision. It is the 200,000 people who voted her into office. It was their decision. People like to say she ran unopposed. She didn't run unopposed. It was just her opponent unofficially withdrew at the last minute. So they say because he unofficially withdrew, notice how I say unofficially withdrew, They claim that she ran unopposed and only received 75% of the vote. Well, if he officially withdrew months in advance as opposed to weeks in advance, and she got 75% of the vote, okay, I'd understand something's going on. But he unofficially withdrew. His name was still on the ballot. That is a red plus 50 district. So these people are actively trying to undermine the democratic process. And what's going to happen? That is one less vote for the Republicans. That is one more vote in the favor of the Democrats for their majority. That's bananas. That's exactly what they're trying to do. They're trying to pad their they're trying to pad their cushion, I suppose. Pad their I'm losing my train of thought here. You know what I'm trying to say. But they're trying to pad their victory, trying to pad the score, right? So they're attempting to make it because just in case, and I think this is what it is, just in case the Progressive Caucus decides to grow a pair and actually be progressive. Because right now, if the progressives decided to start forcing votes, to start forcing issues and saying, oh no, we won't vote for you unless you do this, then all these Democrat resolutions, all these Democrat bills will fail. So the only way to get around that is to start kicking out Republican members of Congress. And that's what they're trying to do. So we, the people, need to have our voices heard. We need to have our voices, like Trump said, peacefully and patriotically heard, because this is important, because this is a direct assault on our democracy. And finally, this is actually from Marjorie Taylor Greene's first Twitter ban back in January. But I thought this was fairly delicious little take from Newsweek. Rep. Greene accused Twitter without evidence of continuously abusing conservative opinions despite allowing adult content and threats from other world leaders, and also claimed it was worse off without Donald Trump, whose account is banned. So it appears she said that, and it turns out that it appears that Twitter is having a coordinated assault with Democrat members of the House of Representatives to silence her so she can't fight back as they're attempting to expel a duly member of Congress from Congress. That's all the proof you need, guys. Twitter and the Democrats are just working hand in hand. Because when you have Democrats saying, Twitter, if you don't do what we tell you to do, we will regulate you to death. What do you think Twitter's going to do? Are they going to do the right thing? Or are they going to do whatever the Democrats tell them to do? They're going to do whatever the Democrats tell them to do because they still want their big, fat check. They still want the money. That's all they care about. They don't care about free speech. They don't care about your opinion. They don't care about the law. They don't care about danger. They don't care about all this stuff. They peddle child pornography. I covered this before. One of my first videos, Twitter, there was teenage boys saying, hey, there's images and videos of us online on your platform. Please take it down. It is of us. We're boys in that. Please take it down. It's destroying our lives. And Twitter said, well, unless you have a copyright violation request, there's no way we can take it down. It's child pornography. It's illegal. Twitter doesn't care unless they're doing what the Democrats tell them to do. And in this moment of time, this moment in time, the Democrats want to silence Marjorie Taylor Greene. They want to silence their political opposition so they can destroy them and no one else can hear what's happening. So that's going to be it for now, friends. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I'll see you all in a little bit. Have a good one.